Vengeance!
Vengeance!
I will have my vengeance!
Vengeance!
Vengeance shall be ours!
Vengeance!
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 Vengeance! Vengeance!
Demon hunters.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Gyro here. As you guessed it, we are talking about Vengeance spec of Demon Hunters. It is not a guide, it is a power comparison on my main Demon Hunter, who I normally push Horrific Visions with solo in Havoc spec. So Havoc is DPS spec of Demon Hunters if you're somehow really new to this information space and World of Warcraft particularly. And today in this video, I simply want to do a run with a reasonable level of push, not pushing too hard, not pushing too little. So we are going to do a 2-mask clear of Orgrimmar, of Horrific Vision of Orgrimmar, observing how Demon Hunter performs in Vengeance tanking spec compared to my normal Havoc spec that I achieved at the moment of recording of this video. I've achieved the highest result of 4-mask clear of Stormwind. And we will talk about my item level in case you're new here, in case you're my regulars, you know it all back to front already. So this is exactly what we will focus on today. Please subscribe if you haven't already and if you're new here, and let's get on with it. So Vengeance, you see my Berexo Demon Hunter. 457 is the item level, fairly corrupted because I have 2 fantastic corruption effects. Take a look at this. We have Infinite Stars of pretty high level, and we have amazing, very mature, as I call it sometimes, baby Twilight Devastation. This is a mature Twilight Devastation that hits like a ton of bricks. You will see it during the run. My Cloak is fully leveled to rank 15. I have fairly decent, I'd say, level of Heart of Azeroth. I have a decent main hand weapon of 460 and a slightly embarrassing non-corrupted hatchet of 455 as an offhand. I have a couple of low-level charms which are DPS focused, and I will also show you my talents, which are kind of my default go-to spec for tanking, for Vengeance. It is not a guide, as I said to you, which is why I'm not stopping on this. You can see that I have all imaginable Mother's Archives talents, so I'm well set up. My main weak point, as I kept saying to you guys in the other videos, as I surmised kind of from my attempt to honestly push as high and as hard as I could, I was trying to push 5 masks many times, and I failed in the background and I burnt out, and I reported on it in one of my earlier videos where I just honestly shared my thoughts with you guys. So now we're back. Now we're back because one of my supporters, Chris, thanks mate. Shout out to you, my man. Thank you very much, first of all, for your support, and thank you for just simply throwing an idea in, as simple as the idea was. I know you were suggesting that I should just use Vengeance because obviously I'm reasonably leveled for my item level range with Vengeance. So why don't I do Mythics, Mythic plus dungeons, right? In Vengeance to get better gear in order to complete this pursuit of making sure that I have a full completed picture of 5 masks before we call it quits in BFA and before we proceed to Shadowlands. You're right, all of my other silent supporters who probably are nodding their heads right now and agreeing with Chris and I, also probably in agreement, and that is a good point. Except, as soon as I read that suggestion, it triggered something in me and I thought, you know what? That's probably true, grinding mythics, I mean. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this power check run, and I'm going to try and see how does Vengeance as a tanking Demon Hunter feels in Horrific Vision. Obviously, thinking that if it feels completely OP and suddenly amazing, then I would possibly push for 5 mask clear, for 4 mask clear in Vengeance. So let's go through this together, as you figured out by now, and commentary will go throughout, so don't go anywhere. And we will just see exactly how good or bad, or where it's lacking, where it's fantastic, the Vengeance feels compared to Havoc that you've seen plentifully. We're doing 2 masks, as I mentioned to you. We're doing 2 easiest masks that are available to you in Horrific Visions currently in 8.3. We are doing the Mask of Dark Imagination, and we are doing Mask of the Burned Bridge. Dark Imagination summons kind of nothing to write home about mob if your sanity falls below 50%. And the Burned Bridge leaves those purple puddles on the ground that drain 6 sanity at a time if it's not amplified by anything else, any other effects. And that's that. So both, I think, are annoying. Obviously they are effects, but at the same time they are not life-threatening. They are fine. I do my usual strat. I first rally up everyone here around the central building where Thrall is, and I'm getting everyone together, and I'm making sure that they are all AoE'd and killed as quickly as possible. In any tanking spec, and Vengeance Demon Hunter is no different. It's not like this advice only applies for bears or for paladins, for prot paladins. For any tanking spec, I believe you need to take advantage of your tremendous survivability and of the power of AoE. You need to damage them together if you want to make any reasonable time, if you want to make it, basically. Even if you are reasonably well geared, even if you have this extra Twilight Devastation and all those kind of effects, which we will talk at length today, because they are the ones that are show makers here, so to speak. Even if you have them, you still are not dishing out as much damage as you would on DPS spec, on Havoc in this particular case. Also, please pay attention to the fact that because I switched specs, I had to switch also Azerite essences, Heart of Azeroth essences, whatever they are called. Yeah. So I do not have access to my Lens of the Focusing Iris. I do not have access to Purification Protocol. I cannot occasionally do quite a bit of a burst and not random like Twilight Devastation is, because sometimes you want it and it's not coming, right? So it's great, but it's not reliable. So I do not have a conscious ability to round them all up and then burn them all down. Well, in this particular case, Twilight Devastation happened. Oh, second time. In the third one, Twilight Devastation is beautiful. Take a look at the recount. It did 46% of damage there at the moment when it first appeared. Of course, right now it got superseded by other abilities, but I'm commenting kind of as I'm rewatching this video with you guys, recording. Twilight Devastation, especially the 75 corruption level one, is insane. It's insane. The success of this run to a major extent is thanks to Twilight Devastation and Infinite Stars, but to a lesser degree. So anyway, point that I'm making here is very simple. When you're doing it as a tank, Vengeance, specifically spec, does allow me to pull a lot more and does allow me to stand in crap and not panic too much as I have to still in Havoc, because when you have 2 masks active, mobs here generally are not a pushover overall, at least at my item level, but at the same time they are now boosted by 50%. Each mask gives you 25% of harder hitting mobs, and that all adds up, as you can imagine. So Vengeance allows me to just stand there. And if you watched any of my earlier clears, any of my previous videos, if you didn't, well, do me the honor and watch it, yeah, so that you are more on topic. I never pulled the mini boss of this area as well as the preceding 2 trash packs. This is the first time I've ever done it, and it worked very well, as you can see. So I am relying heavily, as you can imagine, on Twilight Devastation. I just rally them up and then I stay facing them, I tank facing them, hoping that it goes off. And often it does. Often it does. Maybe if there was a way to actually count and be more precise and pedantic about it, which I don't want to do because it's still supposed to be fun for both you and I. But if I was, then I'd say maybe 70% of the time I got the effect I wanted. I rallied them up, tanked a little bit, and Twilight Devastation came. If not in 5 seconds, then in 10 seconds. So it say 70% of the time I got what I wanted. Those 30% that it didn't were a little bit, of a shame, especially if I have to turn away from the target and move somewhere else, and that's when it goes off. So it misses the crowd in front of me. It just goes that way. That's so disappointing when that happens. But what can you do? These are just the shortfalls of random systems that Blizzard has implemented. It's fine. What's better about Twilight Devastation in this particular thing? Because you rightly could point out that I still have that Twilight Devastation and Havoc spec. Yes, I do. However, it doesn't hit as hard simply because it goes off percentage of your health. It does damage based on percentage of your health. And naturally, I have quite a bit more health as a tank. Quite a bit more. Again, I probably could have prepared better and had actual numbers for you, but I'd say gut feel is that I have 30 to 35% more health in Vengeance spec than I have in Havoc spec, even if I'm not changing the gear. That would be my gut feel. So Twilight Devastation hits 30 to 35% more. And also tanking spec allows me to simply round up a lot more mobs so that we then hit them really, really hard, right? So that's fantastic. Other than that, as far as dishing out simply direct damage other than just slash 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 slash, well, it's really not something to particularly rely on. So I think that whenever and if ever you would like to retrace my steps and try and do this run yourselves on your Vengeance Demon Hunters, I reckon rely a lot on these random corruptions, especially if you're lucky enough to have a good one. And Twilight Devastation is the king of them all, like enough said. And just rely on your survivability. That's what I did. And as far as survivability, as far as relying on that heavily boosted Twilight Devastation, I think the experiment succeeded. I think the experiment proved to me that this spec, this manner of play, has some advantages over my default Havoc one. We will continue watching this. You and I possibly will slow down with this barrage of information. We'll let you breathe a bit. I'll let myself breathe, and we just watch and I comment as we go, as we continue going. I'm not going anywhere, don't worry. But this is where I suppose the explicitly obvious positives of Vengeance spec as opposed to Havoc spec end. And by that I mean that, again, aside from Twilight Devastation, aside from Infinite Stars, so corruption effects, I have lost the offensive effects of my Lens of the Focusing Iris purification protocol, so I simply flat out don't have them anymore, and I genuinely don't have as damage orientated tool set. I do not have I-beam, and I'm not dishing out as much damage. As you can see on a single target right now without procs of Twilight Devastation, I'm pushing somewhere around 20k. I obviously have to move. It's not 100% time on target, so that wouldn't be very fair to kind of just conclude it here like it's low DPS. Well, relatively to Havoc, it is low DPS, yeah? Havoc also, even though I can jump around, and I did, as you can see, to get out of dodge quite a few times here during the run, I can jump around as in Vengeance spec. I like it, it's cool. Havoc feels more mobile. Havoc feels more mobile with dashing forward and also using Vengeful Retreat. So Havoc has an extra mobility thing which allows me to flip backwards. I did a couple of times miss that I didn't have it. Yeah, so I would have preferred to have it. Again, moment like this is wonderful. I just stand on the boss, on the mini boss, and I just damage him. And by the way, if you don't know the trick, if you stand closely enough, so sometimes I didn't manage to, but if you stand closely enough right on him, then that beam that pushes your way and damages you, that beam actually misses you. There is some dead zone there, somewhere there in those millimeters, yeah, on the screen somewhere, that you can hit, and I often succeed, but sometimes I don't. And that allows you to stand right on him, withstand all the damage, even when I'm stunned like this. Yes, my health goes, but at the same time not so badly. And then Twilight Devastation comes out, mwah, and everyone is dead. That's fantastic, right? That is basically the highlight and the joy of this run, and something that I enjoyed thoroughly. You need to enjoy this, and feeling tiny bit OP, even if it's RNG based, I don't care. But feeling tiny bit OP is what often drives us, doesn't it? Like, it's often what makes us play powerful spec. It's what often makes us get better gear when you know, oh, with this piece I'm just really a bit OP. As much as people don't like corruption gear, and I am not arguing with you guys, I am not a fan either. But at the same time, corruption gear gave that extra RNG-based feeling of OP-ness. That sounded really wrong. OP-ness. We just gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna comment on this further, but it sounded a bit off. It's not what I meant. What I meant is OP, overpowered. That's what it makes me feel like. Yeah. And when people say, oh yeah, but like you have Twilight Devastation and I don't, well, it's true. some people do, and a lot of people did before I got mine, right? And I felt maybe similarly. However, I managed to remind myself, and that's what I'll remind you guys, is that in the times before any of these corruption effects, we were still subjected to RNG all the time. Some people had RNG based legendaries in Legion. Some people, even before Legion, they were raiding with their guild and they were lucky to get best in slot, BIS. Yeah. And that BIS could have made their damage a lot better than some people who were trying, diligently grinding just like them and never got it. So that unfairness, to be honest with you, has always been there. So that's what makes corruption. We just forget things, and they are then so much in our face, and we're like, oh, that's just OP, that's just so unfair. Maybe it is in terms of how much damage it does, because people with Twilight Devastation will do metric ton more of damage than compared to those that don't. I'm not arguing with it. That's true. That's very, very true. But at the same time, it's still the same old RNG. Come on, like, to be fair, it's still same old RNG. So finally, we are reaching Rexxar area. Rexxar is arguably the hardest area and the boss of Horrific Vision of Orgrimmar. I know I had this conversation with my people a while ago, and I still insisted on clearing that other area, the name of which I'm forgetting, but the first one that I go into, because I think initially when I just started running visions, that area somehow caused me more trouble than this one. But with masks and with extra corruption effects and with extra stuff, especially when you start using Mask of the Pained on top, when you start doing 3 mask runs, this area skyrockets in difficulty. There are way too stunning abilities. There are way too many stunning abilities. There is way too much stuff that can really mess up your run. Those little scarabs that you think are little and can be virtually ignored, you look at them and you think you guys are trash. They are doing that toxic, venomous green spit that, if ignored, if you just stand in it and it just goes off right now, I'll be stunned. Stuns are death in these places, especially when all the damage is boosted and everything. Don't forget that I'm in tanking spec, and still not going to shy away from pointing it out and reminding you and myself that I am running a food buff. I am running a food buff, Ghastly Goulash. And even with that self-sustain, and relying on much tougher constitution of a tank-based build, my life, my health still goes pretty low. And in one point, I think pretty soon, nowish maybe, my life goes pretty damn low. Okay, pretty damn low, and that was not pleasant. And I was like, well, we will see. We will see when that happens. Let's just wait. But there will be a moment very soon coming up where my health goes. I get stunned naturally, and obviously the amount of damage on me was so much that my health goes even in tank, even with food. And I'm like, surely this shouldn't have happened. Surely this was avoidable. But again, when this stuff happens, we always think that we could have done something and we just didn't. I don't even know how that's possible, but it is. Unless I missed the point when it happened to me, guys. But that was the point when I basically lost cranial defibrillation. Maybe I was talking to you engaged here and kind of watching this replay on the sidelines, and maybe I missed the point. But regardless, you will know if you've paid more attention to the screen than I did when I was talking to you now, you probably would have noticed where I lost cranial defibrillation. So that is possible with 2 masks, with this item level, of course, which is not crazy high, and even with the food buff, even in tanking spec. That is my point. Rexxar wasn't an issue. Why? Rexxar wasn't an issue this time because I used drums. I used Drums of Fury, and Drums of Fury are basically heroism or bloodlust. And I kind of preempted, I guess, trouble that normally I expect from Rexxar, and it helped me stomp him. It did. But at the same time, when we go into Thrall right now to talk to Thrall a little bit, you will see what I mean by highlighting the fact that my and as you can see, yeah, orbs have not been even touched. I'm even going to Thrall without touching any orbs. Yes, I believe, unless it happens right here on Rexxar, I believe I think it happens on Rexxar. Sorry, I think in this fight I lose cranial defibrillation let's keep watching. Let's keep watching. But point is that when you have only one target to deal with, you start instantly noticing how low is your DPS output on a single target as a tank. That's all I'm saying. See how low my health is right now? I think that's a sign of trouble. I've already used my defensive cooldowns. I don't have anything extra. I don't have Warlock Stone, for example, a cookie, and it gets pretty intense. And I get stunned. Boom, that's it. That's the place. See, I just had cranial defibrillation go off, get me back up, and then I look at Thrall's health, and Thrall's health hasn't moved all that much. You see? To be honest, after my cranial defibrillation went off, and until this point, I had no trouble virtually. You were with me the whole time, right? I had no trouble. To be honest, if this didn't get so intense, my overall conclusion would be that Vengeance is very competitive and very comparable to Havoc, and possibly, very carefully gonna say even better, because it allows you to pool bigger groups. It allows you to rely on Twilight Devastation just to do the hard work of DPS lifting when you have whole groups, blah blah blah, all of that. But then it comes to a boss, and with every mask, boss hits harder and gets fatter, so to speak. And your DPS does not necessarily scale. Yes, you stand in those circles, swirly circles that boost your damage by 25%, but that's hardly enough. It's not necessarily enough to just comfortably smack him and be done with it. With Havoc, I would have been doing a lot more damage, even if my health is lower, and so Twilight Devastation doesn't hit as hard. But I still believe that on Havoc, I would have been doing a lot more damage. So I survived this. It was a good run. It taught me something. I hope it was interesting and insightful for you to watch. If you are new here, please subscribe to show your support. Horrific Vision runs are coming to you like a freight train every 2 days. Not always just Horrific Visions. We tank, we talk about specs, we talk about other kind of stuff. But please support me and subscribe. I really appreciate that because, yeah, I have fun doing it. Xafa is my new pet that I'm going to be running with now from now on. He's actually very cute. It's a pig. And I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. And this was all I wanted to say to you. See you next time, my friends. See you next time.